He said, "May I pray for you?" And I said, "No,
Yeah.
you may not."
I once told a team member, I don't accept excuses. And he said, what do you accept? I said, results. And he accepted a job offer somewhere else. Once the mask comes off, you have to deal with what's underneath it. A few years ago, I shared my bullying story for the first time. Junior high, 5'2", chased home. I thought that was the whole story. Then someone reached out to tell me that I had bullied them. I had told the story of what had happened to me. I had not yet told the story of what I became. If you've ever been so focused on producing results that you didn't stop to count what it was costing the people around you, this one's for you. I spent 30 years in corporate leadership making every mistake in the book, some of them twice. I'm Preston Poor, and if you're a leader who's ever felt in over your head but too proud to say it, you're in the right place. This is PQ. Welcome. Last episode, the mask, imposter syndrome, the gap between who people think you are and who you're terrified you actually are. The moment you stopped hiding and started being honest, that's when you connected. But here's the harder truth. Once the mask comes off, you have to deal with what's underneath it. And what's underneath might not be something you created, not something that was done to you, but something you did. And that's today's tension. And it's the one that nobody in the room wants to go first on. Episode 4, Performance versus Formation. Every high-performing leader hits this wall. The drive that pushed you to the top starts running over the people around you. The results at all cost mindset that made you a top performer starts costing you trust. The armor that you built to survive starts keeping you from connecting. The hardest leaders to coach are the ones who are producing, because success is excellent at hiding what formation hasn't yet touched. Performance asks, what are the results? Formation asks, what is it costing the people around you? And the question that God is asking in all that moment is not what did you achieve? It's who are you becoming? Those are two very different questions. Before we go any further, you need to know something. I wasn't always self-aware about this. In fact, the leader that I'm about to describe, that was me. For years, looking back, I exercised some poor judgment. Before I tell you the rest of the story, I used to open team meetings with so much intensity, people would brace themselves, not to be inspired, but to survive. I once told a team member, I don't accept excuses, and he said, what do you accept? I said, results. And he accepted a job offer somewhere else the following week. My early management style could be best described as motivational. Specifically, everyone around me was highly motivated not to be in the receiving end of it. And one night I asked Carla, my wife, do you think people are afraid to tell me hard truths? Well, she paused for a long time. And that was my answer. Okay, funny now, wasn't funny then. You heard the cold open. Someone reached out and told me that I had bullied them. Let me take you back further before I became that leader, to the kid who started it all. Junior high, 5'2", scrawny, physically threatened, followed down hallways, chased home, hiding behind a closed door. 2 boys trying to pull me outside. I called the police. I was terrified. I was alone. And that's where I learned the world will hurt you if you let it in. 5'2" became 6'1", built walls, projected strength, and if you look hard enough, people won't come after you. And it worked for a while. You know, psychologists have a word for this. It's displacement. It's redirecting fear, anger, and anxiety from an original source onto a less threatening one. The intimidation that protected me as a kid started flowing downward onto the teams that I was supposed to be leading. I became the intimidator out of fear of being intimidated. But results, they kept coming. Titles kept advancing. And by every external measure, it was working. You mistake the compliance of fear for the alignment of trust. It's funny. Success overcomes a multitude of sins. But someone who'd been on the receiving end told me the truth. You did to me what was done to you. Not dramatic, not loud, just honest. And it stopped me cold. It wasn't until the Lord got a hold of me that I put down my defenses. I didn't need to be told to be tougher. I need to be taught to love. And that is a very different kind of hard. Most leaders I know go to church on Sunday and show up on Monday like they've never heard a word of it. I was one of them. The Discipled Leader Apprenticeship exists to close that gap. One-on-one discipleship that shapes how you actually lead, not just what you believe. If you're tired of living two separate lives, visit PrestonPoor.com. Clay Scroggins, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here. I've been looking forward to this interview for a while and appreciate taking the time to be with us today. Hey, before we get into this, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me, Preston. Thanks for taking your spotlight and shining it on me. I'm really grateful. But I grew up in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Great parents, great family, wonderful childhood. Moved to Atlanta to go to college. Went to Georgia Tech, studied engineering. I quickly realized when I was studying engineering that this is not what I need to be doing with my life, and the school agreed. I jokingly say that when I was getting ready to graduate, I had failed physics 2 twice, and I needed to get through it so that I could finish this engineering degree. And I had to go meet with the registrar to get in some classes that you could only get into once you pass physics 2. And I said, she was like, "Hey, what are you going to do with this degree?" And I said, "Well, I'm planning on going to seminary to study theology," which she looked at me with the same befuddled look that my parents had for me when I told them that. But I said, "Why don't we do this? If you'll give me this degree, I promise you I'll never use it. How about that?" And so I have, she did not think that was funny, but I have stayed good on my promise. I ended up going to seminary, studied theology, met my wife in seminary. We've been married for, it'll be 20 years this fall. We've got 5 kids, ages,
Congratulations.
I think 17 down to 8. And I spent 20 years as a pastor here in Atlanta, which is where we live still. And about 5 years ago, took the leap to step out on my own and pursue doing a lot of corporate speaking, still some preaching, but that's become my career now, is standing in front of audiences and delivering content in a way that's hopefully engaging and impactful and helpful.
Yeah, no, that's so good. You add a lot of value to a lot of people. It's funny, I had a guest on here recently that had read your book, How to Lead When You're Not in Charge, on influence. And that's one of those skills that I had to learn when I was at the Coca-Cola Company early on. As a matter of fact, I didn't get a promotion because they told me I didn't know how to influence yet. So I had to learn the old hard way to figure all that stuff. Didn't have your book at the time, which would have been very, very helpful. So thank you for that. Well, let's roll into some of these questions that we have for you just to dive into the topic today on that. And the first one for you is, when did you first realize the thing that made you successful was no longer enough?
That's a hard journey. I mean, that question, when I saw that in the notes that you sent me, I thought, oh, good grief, Preston's jumping right in. Nothing, no softballs to get the thing going, right? Let me tell you the hardest thing about church world. Well, I wouldn't say this is always true, but in the organization I worked for, there was a strong desire for everything to be up and to the right. And you would attach eternal consequences to that, right? That there's a life after this life, and how we're impacting people's lives matter, and whether we're introducing more people to Jesus or less people to Jesus, it matters, not only in this life but in the next. And so there's all this. There can be an immense amount of pressure for things to grow. The danger, the hard part, is that life is not always up and to the right, right? And so I would say somewhere in my approaching 40 is where I started to realize whatever skills I have acquired, or whatever skills I had been given that allowed me to get to the point that I was in then. I mean, I was in a very, in the church world, I would have been considered that my career was a success. I had gotten into a really great spot. It was a really large church. Uh, they were paying me well. I had a lot of opportunities to influence, but things were not growing. The church I was working at was declining about, I don't know, somewhere between 5 and 10% a year in attendance, which, every church wants to tell you that they're measuring
Yeah.
far more than just nickels and noses. But at the end of the day, the money and the people in the seat, that's what people, it's just so easy to make that the thing you care most about. And
Sure.
so that was a real trying time for me. I mean, I would say, you don't want to compare your own suffering, your own crisis to other people. This isn't the suffering Olympics. But for me, that was one of the most uh, important crisis of the soul in my life, for sure, is that season when things had stopped growing. And when I realized the skills that I have are not the skills that I need to get to where I want to be.
So what'd you do?
Well, I cried. That was the first thing I did.
Okay.
Did you ever cry? Did you ever cry in a meeting, Preston, at work at Coca-Cola?
Internally, certainly, for
Yeah.
many reasons.
I'd cried at a baptism. I'd cried at a story of somebody's life being changed, but I had never cried over a spreadsheet. And I'm dead serious. I'm not proud of it. That's, again, when I saw your questions, I thought, gosh, we're jumping right in. Usually I'd wait till, a couple, 2/3 of the way in the interview to talk about this kind
Yeah.
of thing. But we were trying to figure out what the issue was. And I was sitting at all these meetings. We were really data heavy. We were really paying a lot of attention to data, which churches don't always do that. But we had passed around another dashboard in another one of our executive leadership team meetings, and there was some green on it, but most of the columns that I was responsible for had a lot of red in it, meaning things were not growing; they were declining. And when we got done with the meeting, there were still people in the room, but I balled the paper up and threw it in the middle of the table, and my boss saw it, and he could tell that I was bothered. And I was like, "Oh, was it that obvious?" Right?
Yeah.
So anyway, he reaches out to me a couple days later, and he was like, "Hey, before we go into the weekend, you want to revisit that meeting on Tuesday? I could tell you were visibly agitated." And I thought, yeah, I would love to talk about it. So we have the meeting. He comes down to my office, and we're sitting. I'll never forget this meeting because we're sitting there. I mean, within 5 minutes, we're immediately arguing about whether we were measuring the right things and why things were going the way they were going. And I started crying, which I'd never cried in a meeting. I mean,
Just
it feels,
overwhelmed from the burden of what you saw and frustration.
I didn't know. I didn't know where the emotion was coming from.
Wow, okay.
In A League of Their Own, was it Tom Hanks that says there's no crying in baseball?
That's
there
right.
should be no crying over spreadsheets. It's just data. It's numbers. It's black and white. It's not meant to be emotional. And so I was confused. And my boss is, because we're working in the church context, he's a pastor and I'm a pastor. And so he does all the things that you do when somebody's crying. He told a joke. They weren't like your poor judgment jokes, but he tried to make me laugh. He
Yeah,
gave me
sure.
space, handed
Yeah.
me a tissue. I mean,
Nice.
and the thing is, I knew all these things that he was doing because I've done it 100 times to somebody I was sitting across the table from. And at one point he says, "Hey, do you mind if I pray for you?" And yes, that was caring and kind, but that is not what I needed in that moment. That is certainly not what I wanted in that moment, because I felt like it was, I'm feeling sorry for you and kind of he was not patronizing me, but that's kind of the way it felt. So, that was rock bottom for me when me being a pastor, told my boss, who's a pastor, when he said, "May I pray for you?" And I said, "No,
Yeah.
you may not."
Yeah.
So we adjourned the meeting. I was like, we're going to have to talk about this next week. I got to figure out what's going on. I went home and still just couldn't figure out what it was coming from. Couldn't figure out why this was bothering me so badly. My wife, she immediately shoos the kids into another room, and she's like, "What is going on?" She had never seen me like this. I had never been like this. So I told her, I was like, it feels like we had just had a baby. And so she was trying to get back to her normal weight of where she lives, and, with her getting her body back. And I said, imagine that you're trying to lose weight and you do everything you know to do to lose the weight. You're eating right, you're exercising, you do all the counting everything. But every time you step on the scale, it's going up. How would that make you feel? And that was so helpful because that was, my way of explaining to myself what I was feeling. I think after a couple weeks of a lot of conversation, what I realized is I was feeling like a failure. It was really one of the first times in my life since failing physics too,
Yeah.
where I had really felt like a failure. And worse than that, I discovered something inside of me that I cared more about being perceived as success or as successful than actually being successful. So yeah, it was genuinely a crisis of the soul. So that was a long way of answering. What did I do?
Yeah.
A lot of soul searching, a lot of trying to get under I think our instinct is to deal with the immediate problem, right? I was trying to deal with, why did this numbers make me feel the way they feel? No, there's something underneath it. Why did I feel inadequate? Why did I need to feel like I had it all together? Why was I afraid of people's perception that things weren't going well, and how that might somehow define me? So that's what I did, is I tried to deal with those root issues.
So let's go off script for a little bit, because these are some questions I think of when I listen to your story. And thank you for your transparency. It's not often you have somebody come in and admit that they had those types of emotions that were driven by some of these things. But how in that, Clay, then did this idea of formation start moving you versus the performance side? Because you're looking at spreadsheets, you're looking at numbers. It's no difference than the Atlanta Braves. They got to have butts and seats,
That's right.
right? You got to have results. And I tell people all the time, results are table stakes, typically in any organization you're in.
That's right.
So the question is, you got to step back a little bit and look at the identity, the character formation, what's going on the inside. Tell me a little bit about that in your openness and your transparency, like you've been. What was going on there?
Well, I think I learned to practice in that season that whenever something is bothering you, our instinct is to look at the thing, look at the whatever the cause of agitation is. But a more profitable, I mean, I think that's understandable, and sometimes appropriate. But I think a better response when we think about discipleship, when we think about sanctification or growth, is to look inside and go, what is this revealing about me? Why, the way this shows up in the workplace oftentimes is it's a person that's bothering you. It's a boss that's bothering you.
Sure.
It's a colleague's ego that's bothering you. And instead of going, yeah, what's the issue? Why is that person such a mess? And why are they such a disaster? And what's her problem? What's his problem? It's always better to try to spend some time of introspection going, what does this say about me that this is bothering me? What is this disturbing inside of me that God may want to be working on, or that may need some, I think of the Jesus and the vine and the branches, that pruning process.
Yeah.
It ain't no
Hard.
fun, but it's a huge part of the process. And maybe, just maybe, God is using this form of irritation or this form of something that's uncomfortable to prune something inside of you. So I would say that was one of the best outcomes of it, is that it caused me to look internal and go, what's going on inside of me that I need to pay more attention to.
Yeah, so good. So, how do you take what you've learned into your next chapter, that you're moved out of the church and into speaking, being with groups, consulting, that type of stuff? How do you take what you learn from all that and apply it, and then help other people grow?
Yeah, thank you for that question, because that's another great thing to remember in the middle of it, is that I was talking to our 17-year-old daughter last night. We went to the Braves game together, a little father-daughter date, and we were talking about that Johnny Cash song, Boy Named Sue. You remember that song?
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
I think it had come up at school and they were talking about it in like a philosophy class. And it's kind of a brilliant concept that this guy, the dad names this guy this name Sue, and he gets beat up, bullied his whole life. And then he finally bumps into the dad, and he wants to beat the mess out of him for naming him Sue. But the dad says, he reminds him, look at what it did for you, right?
Yeah,
Look at what it
right.
got you ready for. Look at what it
Right.
built inside of you. And so, we had a wonderful little moment where we could both think about the times in our life where the thing that we wished wasn't there, God was actually using to develop something in us that he would use later on.
So good.
But you can't see that in the moment, right? It's kind of like, do you do Wordle, Preston? Are you a Wordle man?
Oh, I have to admit, I'm not. No, I'm not.
But you're aware of it. You know what it is.
I am.
So many people, I mean, I've I play Wordle every day, and
Yeah.
it's you wake up every morning staring at these letters going, I know there's a word in here, but I don't know what it is yet. And you slowly start, it becomes more and more clear with every iteration. And that's really the way God works, right? Is that we can't see what's on the other side, but to be able to trust and have faith that no, it might be hard now, it might be uncomfortable now, but he's building something in you for something that's coming down the road that you're going to need. Now I'm on my own. I'm a solopreneur. The success of my job depends on bookings. And it's real easy to live and die, it's real easy to let my emotional health, or at least my emotional state, run proportional to the amount of bookings I get, which is it's a terrible way to live, because, if I got booked to do something today, I'm feeling good. If I didn't, I'm feeling like, a disaster and questioning everything in life. So but I think what I'm able to handle now, I learned in that season, 10 years ago when I first bumped into, how do you deal with life when it's not always up and to the right? You try to gauge your success not based on outcomes, but you try to gauge your success on faithfulness. And did I do the things that I knew that I was supposed to do today that might lead to a booking down the road, right? I mean, that's Jesus's, what I think it's the way he gauged success, is when, that we would look forward to that moment where he might say, well done, my good and successful servant, right?
Yeah, sure.
My good and booked servant, my good and it's faithful, my good and faithful servant.
Yeah.
So I think that's the hope that's certainly the hope for me. I'm preaching to myself at this point.
I hear you. That's so good. Clay, it's every leader has to go through something challenging. I interviewed Jim Kouzes not long ago, and Jim is the co-author of the Leadership Challenge. Maybe you've heard, right?
It's sitting on my desk right here.
Big fan of his. And he said, Preston, one of the common elements of all great leaders are they've gone through something hard to get the other side, to do something extraordinary. And so I often look back and think about leaders like Abraham Lincoln or Winston Churchill that both had struggles, challenges. I even remember reading something that Winston Churchill said that said, everything that I did led me to this point, enabled me to lead like I did during World War II. And so God is shaping and molding and forming your character and preparing you for what you're doing next. And so that's a great point. So thank you for calling it out. I want to ask two other quick questions, and then we'll see if there's anything else you want to add before we conclude our very valuable and rich time together. Address this a little bit. What does it actually look like when a high-performing leader lets God reshape the how? That's the way they approach people, the way they go about things, and not just the results. What does that look like? What has to die? And then what has to stay or gets to stay? What happens in all that?
Well, I would say that the best time to pay attention to that, the hardest time to pay attention to that, but maybe the best, are in the seasons of success, right? Because I don't remember who said it. I think I heard maybe the CEO of Walmart years ago said the seeds of failure are most often sown in the seasons of success. It's those, I think of them as false wins, right? When you went about it with the wrong how, but you got the what that you were hoping for,
right?
That's dangerous, right? Because you think, did I manipulate the person to get them to do what I wanted them to do to get the outcome that I was looking for? Maybe, but that's okay because I got the outcome I was looking for. That's dangerous, right? So I would say we got to all be really aware of the how, particularly in the seasons of success, because we're way more aware of the how in the seasons of failure, because we're going, how do I get out of this failure? How do I diagnose this? How do I fix this? How do I change this? How do I make sure this doesn't happen again? And so we're able to look at the how, but it's those times where maybe you got the sale, or they increased your budget like you wanted them to, or you got the job that you were wanting, or you got the promotion, and you go, great, I got the what, but we forget about the how. So I think the thing that has to die is I think we have to first admit that, there's a potential that just because the what I got right doesn't mean the how was correct. And so I think we got to let that, be willing to be open to, maybe I could have done it a better way. I've noticed people have a hard time. I mean, I was listening to John Rahm yesterday talk about his decision to go on the Live tour. And I appreciate what he said, because he said, I really don't live life with regret. And I thought about it, and I thought, I know what he's saying. Nobody wants to say I have a regret, because it led you to where you are now, right? And so to say I wish I would have done it different, it's kind of hard to say that. But there's a difference between, if I could do it over again, I would do it differently, and I have a regret, right? I think being able to go, yeah, if I could go back and do it differently now, knowing what I know now, I would do it differently. Do I regret the way it worked out? Maybe, maybe not, because it led me to the place where I am now. I think being able to parse those two issues out is really helpful, as well as we think about the how versus the what.
Yeah. So good. Now, I have to confess, I have multiple regrets in my life. So we might do another series called the 20 regrets that I confess. So, but each of those things I've learned, but right. So I think it's about what you're proposing, is that it is the way you look at it, the outlook you have.
Agreed.
And are you learning from your failure,
That's right.
your challenges to bring
Yeah,
these
it's a
things forward?
humility.
It is. It comes from
Yeah.
humility and
Yeah.
willing to admit that you did make some mistakes, but there's some grace for yourself that goes into all that too. Hey, last question for you. It's for the audience, is for millennial leaders, and I'm really trying to cue in to help them as they are developing into leadership. I don't know if you know this or not. I share the statistic every once in a while that leaders typically are moved from individual contributor to a leader position, people leader, when they're 30, but they don't get leadership training until they're 40. So there's a 10-year gap, and there's a lot of opportunity, like me, to make a lot of mistakes. And you can learn from those, and you can not learn from those and create some habits either way. But for the millennial leader who's producing results, but starting to sense that something is off, what's the first honest question that they need to ask themselves?
I like the question, what is it like to be on the other side of me? A good friend of mine, Jeff Henderson, introduced that question to our organization. And I've used it so often, but I think the thing that we miss so often when things aren't going well is what could change about the way I'm approaching this, or what could change about the way I'm showing up. Um, so often it's the outcome that we're wanting to change. It's well, how do I fix the result? But I would leverage the moment to go, maybe God wants to use this season to change something inside of me. Maybe God wants to use this to adjust something, fix something, shape something. And the best people that can help you with that are the people that are around you. God's given us this amazing opportunity to go solicit feedback and seek the kind of feedback that is going to help shape us if we're willing to do it. I love that there's a proverb Solomon wrote that said, the one who hates discipline is stupid. He says.
Yes, that's right.
I know, right? That basically, yeah, it feels like correction. It feels like discipline to have somebody tell you something about yourself that you don't love, but wouldn't you be better off to go and get it? So what would it look like for you to leverage this season where things aren't going as well as you maybe want them to go get some crucial feedback about yourself that could really help change things? And then I would also, I would add to that maybe something that might not be as constructive, but can be just as formative, but trying to ask the question, uh, whose approval am I after? Whose applause am I after? Who am I working for? I always think about that. There's a scene out of First Night. This is a movie from the 90s that millennials will not recognize, but Richard Gere played Lancelot in First Night. And there's a big giant in the town square, key character in the movie. He's kind of showing off how great he is at fencing, jousting, whatever. And Lancelot shows up on the scene. This is real early in the movie, and he goes, I'll give it a go. It's kind of like jumping in the cage with the bear to wrestle the bear. And he's like, I'll try it. And so he's kind of going back and forth with the giant, and he makes this little move, and he's got the giant sword. He's got his sword and the giant sword. And the people kind of go crazy, and everybody's going, oh, there's, kind of like a new king on the stage. And after the crowd dissipates, the giant comes to Richard Gere, to Lancelot, and he goes, how did you do that? And he goes, I'll tell you. Are you really open to listen? And he goes, yeah. He said 3 things. Number 1, you have to study your opponent. He said, I can do that. He said, number 2, you have to know exactly when to strike. He goes, I can do that. He said, number 3, you cannot be afraid of whether you live or whether you die. And Lancelot, delivers that line, and the giant
Yeah.
it's a little bit like Rich Young Ruler, where he kind of just shirks back into the bush and goes, I don't know that I can do that, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think that when you establish that God is your authority, that he's the one whose approval you're seeking, that he's the one who determines your destiny, that he's more in charge of your career than your boss is, it can get you it gives you a freedom. It gives you a not a carelessness, but it gives you a freedom to care less about what somebody else might think about you, which will allow you, hopefully, to do the thing that you need to do in the situation that you're in. So I think that establishing some of those real going back to those foundational questions of why do I exist, and who made me, who formed me, who really is the authority over me. I think it gives us a bit more. Can give us a sense of lightness in a really hard season when things aren't going as well.
So good, so good, so wise. In the beginning of your comments, I use a phrase all the time. What does it feel like to sit across the desk from me?
Yeah,
So
great.
similar to what
Yeah,
Jeff Henderson maybe
love that.
said that I learned
Yeah.
to say and use. So good, so rich, so valuable. Thank you for all that. Is there anything else on this topic or anything else that comes to mind that you'd love to share that you haven't yet?
Yeah, I would just say I speak a lot on leading when you're not in charge. That I've written a couple other books, but that book is the one that I get requested to talk about a lot. And whenever I talk about that topic, people naturally go, sounds great, but I got a terrible boss. What do I do? I would just say to anybody listening to this going, yeah, I'm in a situation where I just have got, it's not healthy for me. It feels maybe, it's just it's not a place where I'm able to grow, and not able to be the leader that I really want to be today. If anybody's feeling that kind of discouragement, I would just tell you, um, having a great boss, having great colleagues, working at a great place, of course, it's wonderful, but that's not always the case for every single one of us. A lot of people are working for somebody that you feel like is really not good for you long term. And I would just encourage you, number one, you're probably not going to be there long term, so that's okay, and you can take some hope in that and have some peace in that. But number two, back to what you started off with at the beginning, what before you leave, before you go do something else, make sure you squeeze everything out of what you can learn, because one of the greatest times to learn is when things are not going well. There's a reason why the weights in the weight room are heavy. It's because that resistance, that weight creates resistance, which builds strength. And so the situation that you're in right now, though it may be hard and though it may be challenging and maybe even frustrating, if you allow it to, it really can build something in you that is going to be so valuable down the road. So before you just take off and run, which sometimes is often understandable and sometimes appropriate, I would just encourage you, do everything you can to go, all right, God, what is it? Before you remove this, or before you remove me from this situation, how can you use it? How can you use this situation
Yeah.
to shape something in me? So I love the theme that you brought today, and I just um, would love to encourage anybody listening that, hey, uh, something's going on. The Almighty God is doing something inside of you, and so let Him continue to do His work. And I think you'll look back and be really glad that you did.
So good. Yeah. Thanks, Clay. It's this idea of instead of why is this happening to me in this moment? What can I learn from it?
Yeah, that's right.
And that truly comes from a character that is formed in a posture of humility. As I've often learned what not to do from toxic work environments or bad managers, and you don't want to carry that on. If you don't have a character or you don't have character developed in you, often you develop and see them as role models, and leadership by example kicks in, and you just replicate that behavior. And so that's why we see so many leaders in the marketplace that are not great leaders, is because they probably have been formed and seen leaders do the same to them. And they've just thought that that was the way to do it. So, so good. Our conversation's been so rich today, but here's what keeps coming back to me. Here's what keeps coming back to me. It's the tension between performance and formation isn't just a leadership problem. It's a soul problem. You can drive results your whole career and still not be the person God is calling you to be. Because the real question isn't about what you're producing, it's who you're becoming. And nobody in scripture wrestled with this more than Saul. Think about Saul. By every measurable standard, he was absolutely exceptional, zealous, credentialed, advancing. He knew the law, had the mission, and had the authority. But folks, he was terrorizing people. He was going house to house, dragging men and women off to prison. He was breathing threats and murder against anyone who followed Jesus. And he thought he was doing God's work. Think about that from his perspective at the time. He thought he was doing God's work. He was performing, but for the wrong formation. But then he meets Jesus on the road to Damascus, and everything stops. He's blinded. He's brought low. He's led by the hand into the city. For 3 days, no food, no water, just sitting in what he'd become. Then this guy named Ananias comes. God sends him to the man who had been hunting Christians. God says to him, go to him, restore his sight. He's my chosen instrument. And that very thing that made Saul dangerous, his fire, his drive, his refusal to quit, God didn't extinguish that. He directed it. Paul, the most prolific missionary in history. That's who Saul became, Paul. The same energy, the same intensity, the same relentlessness. I want you to hear this. Formation doesn't kill what performance built, it redeems it. So that's the invitation for you today. Not to become soft, not to lose your edge, but to let God take the fire in you and aim it at something worth burning for. So, what do we do with all this today? I'm not going to let you sit in the tension that we're talking about today. There are 3 things that I wish someone had told me when I was younger, before I hurt people that I was supposed to be leading. Number 1, fear-based results have a ceiling. You can drive people through intimidation and get results for a season. But the ceiling is low and the cost is high. Trust-based leadership scales. Fear-based leadership collapses under pressure. The sooner you know this, the fewer people you have to go back and apologize to. And Lord knows I've had to do my share of that. Number 2, the people who push back are actually a gift. When I was younger, I resented feedback. I saw pushback as disloyalty. Now I understand that the person willing to tell you the hard truth is the most valuable person in the room. The ones who stay quiet aren't loyal. They're afraid. What's important for you is to learn the difference. Number 3, God is more interested in who you're becoming than what you're producing. Your results are not your legacy. The people who were shaped by leading alongside you, that's your legacy. The question isn't, what did you build? The question is, who did you build it with? And what did it cost them? The toughness that kept you alive doesn't have to be the thing that defines your leadership. Let God take the armor off. What's underneath, it is the leader that people actually want to see. So that's arc number 1. 4 episodes, 4 tensions about identity. Who you are when title changes, that was number 1. Who you are when pressure mounts was number 2. Who you are when the mask comes off was number 3. In today's episode, number 4, who you are when you finally see what you've become. And here's the thread underneath all 4. Rooted in identity, performance is unstable ground. Okay, in arc 2, the tensions actually shift. They move from who I am to how I lead, from identity to execution, and from formation to function. See you then. Well, that's a wrap. Thanks for spending part of your day with me, and I know your time is valuable and your to-do list is long. If this was helpful, share it with someone else who needs it. Like it, comment, leave a review. It helps more people find the show, and quite honestly, it makes me feel like I'm not just talking to myself in here. And if today's tension hit home, maybe a little too close to home, and if you're tired of being one person on Sunday and someone else on Monday, check out the Disciple Leader Apprenticeship at PrestonPoor.com. 10 weeks, 1 hour a week, 1 conversation at a time. No slides, no lectures, just real talk. And find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram. Peace out, be a rock star.